compete as much as you can. The more you compete, the more you learn about how to compete, right? That's obvious. It's so like no matter what you do in life, if you do a lot of it, you'll get better at it, right? So
Welcome back to the Players Pursuits podcast, episode 5. This is a fun one. I got Austen Truslow on. Korn Ferry Tour slash Asian Tour slash Dakota's Tour slash PGA Tour player. We'll kind of hit up on all that. But he just got full status for the Asian Tour this year. You've definitely seen a video of him practicing, playing, whether you know it or not yet. We'll cover that.
The game of golf. It's both challenging and rewarding, requiring focus, concentration, and the ability to tune out outside distractions. Peak performance is achieved through a synergy of body and mind. Shell Golf Apparel is designed with advanced textile technology that moves with you, with four-way stretch and moisture-wicking properties that keep you cool and dry. Visit shell.shop today and get 40% off the entire golf collection using promo code PlayerPursuits. Now, back to the podcast with your host, Alex Shattuck.
Austen, it is great to have you on. How are things going, and where are you right now? I never know what continent you're on.
yeah, things are going well. Thanks for having me on. I am in Tampa, Florida, at home, in my house at home,
Okay, so
and
finally in the home base, not always
yeah.
living out of the suitcase.
Yeah, getting ready to head over to Malaysia in about 10 days.
Okay, perfect. So we'll cover the Asian tour stuff, but let's talk about how we kind of got to where we are. For those that don't know, Austin and I actually graduated high school together down in Florida, Lake Mary, Florida. Both kind of training full time at the Mike Bender Golf Academy. So Austin, I, tell us a little bit more about your come up through junior golf, both where you lived, where you're from, but also, I mean, you're probably Mike Bender's longest tenured student right now.
Probably one of them, yeah, if not the longest. Yeah, I'm from New Smyrna Beach, Florida, just a small beach town just south of Daytona Beach. Grew up playing at the New Smyrna Muni, Sugar Mill Country Club, and a little club called Hidden Lakes. And, you know, I've always loved playing golf. I played it since I was 4 or 5 years old. And I played other sports growing up and didn't play golf exclusively until high school. And in high school, I played golf at Spruce Creek High School and Lake Mary Prep School in Lake Mary. And I was a decent junior golfer from ages 8 through 14, and then in high school, I just gradually got better and better, and I ended up playing in kind of the AJGA invitational events, and my junior senior year of high school, I won 3 AJGAs in a row, and got into the top 5 of the polo rankings, and kind of got to experience the highest level of junior golf. And yeah, so I ended my junior golf career on a very high note, but I kind of got to play all levels of junior golf, from the local Volusia Flagler junior golf events, to the Hurricane Tour, to the Florida Junior Tour, and then, eventually getting into some more invitational stuff like later in high school.
Yeah, well, I remember, we met probably junior year of high school, and yeah, there was kind of this, oh, Austin's coming to live nearby so you can practice all the time. I'm like, who's Austin? Yeah, oh, he's a good player. He's a good player. And Mike's like, listen, like, he's really good. And then over the next 18 months or so, you went from a good junior in Florida to, what was the high water mark? Number 2 junior in the country?
Yeah, on the polo rankings, I was second, and I think all the Golf Week and Junior Golf Scoreboard, I was still top 10, but the best ranking was the polo ranking.
All right, let's talk about kind of day to day at Mike Bender's Academy. I was a kind of a late addition. I got there when I was like 16, but you were already well versed in kind of what goes on there, playing with the mini tour guys already. What does that upbringing teach you as a player?
You know, at each level, you don't know what you don't know, and so you go, you know, even though you were excelling at one level, whether it's on the local kind of junior circuit or the state circuit, you just start to play harder courses and play with better players and travel more and learn, how to kind of transition week in, week out. And I think you learn so much about how you have to play golf in terms of managing your time, managing your practices, practice rounds. That's a big thing that you learn, especially as a junior golfer, as you play more competitive events. And then you kind of go, as you play with better players, you notice the things that they do well, the things that, you didn't realize good players do, course management stuff, shot making things, um, and then just kind of the technology that comes with it. There's always a bit of a culture shock when you grow up, getting a new set every 2 years, and then as you get into the higher levels, club companies will start giving you equipment for free. So then you start tinkering with all that stuff, and it's fun, but it's not necessarily productive to just constantly be changing things. And so, like at each level, like John Weir, my good friend and caddy, says like new level, new devil, and I kind of that resonates with me because it really is like as you climb up in the golf world and play different tours and play with better players, it's like you just kind of notice the little incremental things that you can do to get better and be more competitive.
Yeah, you have kind of played at truly every level, from junior golf to amateur golf to pro golf, kind of skirted the college golf world a little bit. What went into your decision to turn pro at a young age?
Well, it wasn't, a plan that I'd had for years or anything. I came back to Florida after my time at University of Virginia, and I was going to class at Rollins College, and I scheduled my classes to, be in school from about 3:30 p.m. till about 9 p.m. And, I'd be on campus 3, 4 days a week. And so I was practicing a lot, I was getting a little bit better. I was playing all the mini tour stuff in the Central Florida area and then the Dakotas tour in the summer. And, it was May of 2015, I turned pro. And leading up to that, the real reason was, I was playing mini tour events already. I figured I might as well be eligible to make money, while I
Yeah,
was in
stop
school.
stop earning the Publix gift cards.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Frank on the Moonlight Tour gives the amateurs gift cards of your choice, and I think at the time you were limited to about $500 or $700 or so. And yeah, so the decision was really an economic decision, but it was also just a convenience decision because I really wasn't continuing to play a lot of elite amateur golf anyways because of my school schedule. And, the elite amateur events require a lot of travel. So if you're still in college and you're not really in a traditional golf program, it's very difficult to travel, to different states and compete. And so I was already competing basically in my backyard in the Orlando area. And so I figured that, might be the best way for me to get better. And it's just one way to do it. Not many guys have gone that avenue, but at the time, it just seemed to be the best decision for me.
Yeah, I think that it really worked out. You had more professional experience by the time you would have finished college than any of the kids coming out. And
Hmm.
yeah, it's not perfect for everybody. There's a camaraderie, a college golf team aspect of it that's a lot of fun, all that. But you got your degree. We're already playing pro golf, and it set you up really nicely, kind of moving forward. So during the school year, going to school, playing mini tour stuff in Florida, coming, living at my house, playing Dakota's tour in the
Yeah.
summers. What was that? 3, 4 years.
Yeah, 4 summers,
Yeah,
15 through 18.
and playing with a higher level, higher caliber of player than you probably would in college definitely sets you up for playing that next level. One thing I wanted to dive into with you, especially, is Q school, and kind of
Hmm.
what is that pressure cooker like? You've gone through it a number of times, made it through, other years not so much, but made it through at most levels.
Yeah, well, I didn't make it through any Q schools till 2018. I had done, Korn Ferry Q school in the fall of 2015, Latin American Q school in the winter of 2016. Then I had done the same exact thing again in 2016, 2017, and I think I did one or two Canadian Tour Q schools in there, and I went three years in a row of not qualifying for any tour, which was really disappointing because I felt like my game was solid. It wasn't ready to play on the PGA Tour, but it was definitely good enough to get through Q schools. And I just think that I had some maturity deficits in terms of just like managing the nerves, and just sticking to my game plan and being able to prepare the right way. And it's just timing. It's a very cliche thing to say in professional golf, but timing is very important. And also in that 2015, 2016, those years, my chipping was really bad, and I wasn't quite using like the technique I use today. And so there was so much added pressure on me to hit the ball well in those Q schools, especially when you're playing on tight muddy Bermuda and Florida, which thankfully, living in Florida, I was able to do all those Q schools in Florida, right? They have the Canadian Tour qualifiers here, the Latin American Tour qualifiers here, and the Korn Ferry Tour. You can basically play, two or all three stages in Florida, or including pre-Q if you add that on. So, I was just struggling with my chipping a little bit. I had a little bit more to learn about managing my game and preparing for big events. And, I ended up getting my first status the December of 2018, which, in the end turned out great because that was when I would have been doing my first Q school out of college anyways. I would have graduated in May of 2018 following, the path that I was planning to originally. And so it was kind of like a nice graduation gift. I got on the Asian tour, and I just went from there. And then I got, good status on the Korn Ferry Tour in 2019, which was, I literally like got my degree the week or two before I got Korn Ferry Tour status, because I took an extra year to get through. So, because I had a pretty light course load in order to play more golf. And I was always willing to push back my degree if I did earn status, right? Like the Q schools, I wasn't planning to do Q school and then get through and then still just go to school. The plan was if I get status, I'll take a, leave of absence and then see how things go. And if things work out, I might not go back. If not, I'll just finish my degree. But the way it worked out, I never, got full status while doing it. So the timing worked out well there, and it would have been, basically the same had I gone to school for 4 years.
So looking back at the timing of everything, the timeline, it really was around the time that you went one-handed with the wedge, and that's where I say most of you have seen Austen chip or play, whether you know it or not. He's the one-handed guy at the U.S. Open, one-handed chipper at the U.S. Open. But that was truly when he started getting status different places. That's when exemptions started coming through. Performance, finishes definitely started coming to be. So let's talk about that now. Why are you chipping one-handed? And then I can provide some background as to the reaction that came of it.
Yeah, well, my senior year of high school, that summer, I just started, really having poor contact with my chipping. I have a vivid memory of when it kind of started was at the Players Amateur at Berkeley Hall in South Carolina. I think it would have been in like June or July of 2014, and I remember the UVA coach, Bowen Sargent, was out there watching me, and I got to a par 5 and had a pretty easy, straightforward chip, and it was an easy birdie, and, I bladed it over the green and made bogey, and, from there, it was just a real grind the next really 3 years, trying to figure things out. And I tried all sorts of different methods. I would do drills on my left foot, drills on my right foot. Um, I would work on dead wrist. I'd work on soft and wristy. I'd work on, a hard pivot. I'd work on no rotation. Um, and then I started doing a one-handed drill, left-handed and right-handed. And the right-handed drill was just really there to kind of, soften the swing, and then, allow the angle to release and transition, and just use the bounce by kind of adding loft. And I started doing it with lower irons too, to be able to hit them off tight lies. I find it's a lot easier to hit, a tight grainy lie with lower loft, because it forces you, to use the bounce and to use kind of more effective loft on the wedge. It's very easy if you're using a lob wedge into a tight grainy lie to, try to create speed by really de-lofting it. And I shouldn't say speed, but trying to create the distance that you need through de-lofting it. And you know, it was a it wasn't very long, and between when I started the one-handed drill and implementing it in tournament golf. It probably only took about a month or two. And it was with you in South Dakota, I think, in the summer. It might have been 2016, but I feel like it was probably 2017. Um,
Yeah, it
and
was one
then
of those years. I know you had kind of gotten a lesson, gotten it as a drill. All of a
yeah,
sudden, he was doing it in chipping contests, and then all of a sudden, it was in practice rounds. And then I
yeah,
think I'm going to do this if I get this shot in a tournament. I was like, you're nuts. But
yeah.
I think how you got everyone on board, and tell me if I'm wrong, but the quote that I kind of remember is, "Listen, I'm a good ball striker. I just need to be decent around the
Hmm.
greens, right?
Yeah,
Like I tell anyone that'll listen, Austin's a top five long iron player in the world when he's firing on all cylinders, and I don't even know if that's really a hot debate if you actually see it in person. So just making sure you're not losing shots is almost the priority in that situation. And I know an instructor, a mentor of both of us, often talks about like having your superpower,
yeah.
knowing what you're great at, and leaning on that rather than always trying to make your weaknesses your strengths.
Hmm.
And
Absolutely.
so, yeah, and that was around the time when status started coming around. I got into a PGA Tour event. I went down and watched, and top 10 there. So one thing I want to mention or ask you about is, if I remember the timeline was right, you went over, got full Asian, one Asian Q school, which is impressive in itself. Come back, play PGA Tour event, top 10. How do you decide where to take your career from there? I think one of the difficult parts, if you don't have full PGA Tour status or wherever, is trying to decide where to play.
Hmm. Yeah, I was very excited to play the Asian Tour in 2019. It was the first place I'd earned good status, and I got lucky and got into that Puerto Rico Open event and got top 10, and then got in the Honda, and I put up a good effort at the Honda, just missed the cut by one. And at the time, my agent was looking at the different avenues to get to the Korn Ferry PGA Tour, because ultimately at that time that seemed like the best way to go. And during that season, if you finished top 200 on the FedEx Cup points list, even as a non-exempt member, you could get into the Korn Ferry Tour playoffs, which used to be, the top 75 or so Korn Ferry Tour players, and, the bottom 75 or so PGA Tour players. And, it really wasn't an unrealistic thing to accomplish at that point, because with the top 10, I think I only needed about, one or two cuts, where I had, 20, top 30-ish finishes. And so when you make a cut on the PGA Tour, you get in the Mondays the rest of the year. And so I didn't have to do the pre-qualifiers. So I was actually not really planning to go and do all the Mondays. I was really just, at first, I was kind of planning to do both. I was thinking, okay, I'm going to play the Asian Tour events that I'm in, And then the weeks that I'm not playing Asian Tour events and I'm home, I'll do the Mondays. But then I was supposed to go to Jakarta in, I don't know, it was May or June or something. And I ended up spending 2.5 days in the Philadelphia airport. And it was just one of these crazy, life experiences where you just feel like the world is, the universe is telling you, okay, well, let's try to simplify our life, and maybe this is a sign that we just got to stay in the U.S. and just do the Mondays, because that it is a brutal travel schedule going back to Asia. That's something that I've picked up on again just recently. But it just seemed like I didn't have all the starts on Asian Tour, and I was already somewhat close to being able to play the Korn Ferry Tour playoffs, or the PGA those playoffs, which you could end up with a PGA Tour card at the end of that. So it just seemed clear that that was probably the best opportunity I had at the time. And I did the Mondays the rest of the year, and I got through two other ones. So I'd played 4 events. I didn't make the cuts in those events. I played fine, but at that time, my game was good, and I think I could have definitely made more cuts and played better. But I hadn't really played tour golf yet. I'd only played a couple Asian Tour events and the events in Australia, and I hadn't played the Korn Ferry Tour. I'd only played that Puerto Rico Open and the Honda Classic, and the Puerto Rico Open is an easier event for me to play in because I'd played that course as a junior golfer, I think, for 3 or 4 years. And it's an off week event. There aren't the crazy galleries aren't out there. You're not warming up on the range next to Rory or anything. Like it was a little bit more of a comfortable environment for someone that hadn't played a lot of tour golf. But I really gained a lot of confidence in 2019 by playing those PGA Tour events, and I wasn't intimidated by the tour environment by the end of the year, having played a few more events. And it gave me a lot of confidence, even though I didn't have the success that I wanted. By the time Q School came around, I felt a lot more confident in my ability to belong on the Korn Ferry Tour. And so I think that playing those qualifiers and having some success in those qualifiers, and then also playing a few PGA Tour events, by the time Q School came around, I felt more ready than ever to do Q School that year. And it was the first time I got through second stage, and played pretty well at final stage, missed full status by literally the last person on the course. And then I went into 2020 knowing that I'd get some starts and just try to go from there.
Yeah, so that was where really, I like to say that's where seeing your name on my social media feeds went from, the local stuff or just friends or, your family to, oh, golf week. Oh, Monday Q. Like, it started becoming a little bit, that was really the next level. And that's how pro golf works. There's very distinct levels to each area of play, each tour, as you kind of progress your way up. So what is playing full-time Korn Ferry Tour like? And then obviously you were having a pretty good season before kind of some hurdles got in the way, and we can run through those quick and talk about where you're at now.
Yeah, the Korn Ferry Tour is highly, highly competitive. The players are, the best college players, great PGA Tour players that might have had a bad season the previous year, or even a decent season, didn't keep full status. And then you have past winners. The level of play on the Korn Ferry Tour is so high. I'd say the biggest difference between the Korn Ferry Tour and the PGA Tour is just the caliber of courses. You have a little bit more of the kind of hybrid between mini
Golf
tour
apparel
courses.
is designed with advanced textile technology that moves with you, with 4-way stretch and moisture-wicking properties that keep you cool and dry. Visit shell.shop today and get 40% off the entire golf collection using promo code PlayerPursuits. Now, back to the podcast with your host, Alex Shattuck.
Yeah, so what happened? Obviously 2020 rocked the world. A ton happened in pro golf, outside pro golf. But what happened that year for you? And I know there was a rough month in there.
Yeah, Oh, in 2021.
Oh, 21, yeah.
Yeah, in
After
2021.
the double year of trying to, yeah,
Yeah,
the whole Korn Ferry mess.
2021, it was just a tough year. I mean, 2022 was too, but 2021 more so. I'd played pretty well in 2020, and they combined the 2 years. The PGA Tour decided to
Yes,
combine.
nobody got elevated. Rather, they
Nobody,
did a or continuation into the next year, like a little
yeah, so
wraparound.
nobody got elevated. Nobody lost their status that they'd earned in 2019. And I had a full schedule, and so the season was supposed to start, or it did start in Sarasota. And the morning of the first round, I had an early tee time, and I was kind of half asleep, and I was going to the bathroom, and I jammed my finger in like a really sturdy door going into the stall, and it was, it hurt, but I knew I was going to be fine, but I just couldn't grip the club that day. And, I rested, I had to withdraw. And so I rested it for about, I don't know, 6 days or actually, I didn't even have the rest period from that because I went to a friend's charity event that weekend. I wasn't supposed to go to it because I was planning to be playing in the tournament. But on Sunday, I wasn't even playing golf. I was riding around in a cart supporting my friend's event, and one of his friends cold shanked a 5 iron and hit me like right in the ankle, on the bone. And so, at that time I was resting my finger, but then for the next 12 days I was just resting my ankle and not walking on it because I just had nothing broke or fractured. It was just bad bone bruising, and so I didn't play. Between the ankle and the finger, I think it was about 2.5 weeks or so. And then I was able to play at the next event in Louisiana. And so I go to Louisiana. I'm rusty. I'm not hitting it very well. And then I made an error that no pro should make, and I decided to switch golf balls like literally 2 days before the tournament. Um, and I switched to a slightly firmer golf ball. And I was really hitting these knuckly drivers that were not well controlled. The spin rates were probably between 17 and 1900 RPMs, and I wasn't hitting my irons well, and I missed the cut by a bunch there. And so I had the weekend there to practice and kind of get ready for Savannah the following week, which I had played great at Savannah the previous year, finished I think third place, and it's golf that I'm very familiar with. It's Bermuda. It's only 4 hours north of where I grew up. It has a nice feel that I'm used to, and I really like that course. And so I went there and I played really well the first 2 days. I think, tied for seventh going into the weekend. And Friday afternoon, I started feeling sick. I had a fever, body aches, just weakness, and I went to bed early for that Friday night. Played Saturday, felt bad the whole round. Didn't play terribly Saturday. I think I was still top 15, top 20 at the end of Saturday. And one of the things about the top level pro golf is it you have to have a decent round every round.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to play 10 out of 10 every round, but it is amazing how much a tournament can change because the level of play is so high that you have one bad round and you can drop 40 spots.
Well,
Especially
I
on
mean,
the
if you shoot even par, you might get passed from a guy firing 62, 8 shots behind you.
Yeah, exactly. And so I didn't drop much that Saturday, but I was more sick Saturday, and then Sun. And look, you can play great golf being sick. Like it happens all the time. I mean, in fact, it's like almost kind of a blessing sometimes when guys get sick. They play better. But for whatever reason, I didn't play great on Sunday. I finished poorly. I think I started off the round fine, but really struggled. Kind of mid like late mid in the round, and I think I shot 3 over and ended up finishing tied for 46th or 7th or something like that. And so it was a disappointing week. It was a week where I felt good on the course. I switched back to the golf ball I was using before. So I felt like I was starting to kind of get into rhythm. Disappointing week, but it was still a made cut. It was still a check, and it was still something to build on. So then I drove down the next day to Sandestin, Florida for the following event, checked in. At that time, they were having the weekly COVID tests, and I was concerned that I was going to test positive. I actually didn't really think I had COVID because I'd had COVID relatively close to when like I'd had it close, within a year or
Recently.
so of 2021. So I thought maybe it was, you know, a cold or a flu or something, And so I tested, I went to the course Tuesday, played a practice round, hadn't had the results back, and then, Tuesday late afternoon, I got a call from the tour saying that I tested positive for COVID. And, what sucked about it is, obviously I might have gotten other people sick over the weekend and Monday, but also like by the time Tuesday night came around, I felt normal again. I felt maybe a little achy, but my fever had gone away by, Sunday night or Monday morning, and I felt decent, but couldn't play. So, I had to withdraw those first four events. It was withdraw, miscut, tied for 47th or whatever, and then another withdrawal. And so, it was a rough start to the season. But, I went home and, after the quarantine, I got ready for the next event, which was in Las Vegas. And then, I flew out to Vegas, and leading up to the event, my wrist, I'd had some wrist pain before, but I'd never had to take a lot of time off for it. But the night before the first round, I got a light workout in, and I could feel like a light throbbing on the top of my wrist. And it was kind of like in that when you palm the ground and put pressure on it, like that's what was hurting it. And so, I felt a little bit of like some pain before that round even, but I really didn't think much of it. I was like, okay, like I've played golf with some slight wrist pain before, no big deal. And I go out and play, and I wasn't playing particularly well, and the wrist was really hurting more than normal throughout the round. And then I got to the 18th hole, and it was kind of a short, quirky par four, and it was straight downwind, and you kind of needed to lay up about like 250 short of a bunker. And with how firm and fast it was just basically like a punch 5-iron. And I got steep on a 5-iron, and my hands passed, kind of like this. After I went from like a bowed position to extension real quick, and I just felt this pop in my wrist, and it hurt, like it hurt horribly. And I walked down the fairway, was hoping, maybe it was just kind of something
Little
moving
stinger.
around in there, nothing
Yeah.
too bad. And then I tried gripping the club, and I couldn't take it back, and so I was like, oh shit, like this is a family show, right?
I hear you.
I was like, oh God, I can't make a swing. So I actually played the last hole one-handed. I think I like one-handed a 7-iron down, and then making double. It was stupid. But part of me was thinking, you know what? Maybe it feels better tomorrow, and I can still try to play and salvage a decent week or whatever. But it became clear, that it got so swollen, and the pain was intense, all night, all morning. And so I withdrew from that event, and then, went home, rested it, iced it, and just anyways, long story short, it never really got better, right? And so I consulted with a lot of doctors, was very kind of, I put a lot of thought into whatever decision I made. I got cortisone shots approved by the tour in the beginning to just see if I could, play through and just maybe not have to avoid surgery. But, the imaging showed that I had, a tear of my scapholunate ligament and dorsal capsule. And it's a painful injury, especially for golf. And, I tried to play with the cortisone injections, and they might have helped a little bit, but it was painful, every day, and ultimately just decided to get surgery, which was a really tough decision because at that time I was, about 55th on the points, and I knew that if I could finish top 75 at the end of the year, I would keep full status for the next year. And I knew that if I didn't play the rest of the season, it was unlikely I would finish in the top 75. In fact, it was very possible that I wouldn't even finish in the top 100. So, the tour was good in the sense that they ran good, projections of what they expected the points to be, and they said, look, you might finish top 85, and if you finish top 85, you'll still have a decent status for the next year. And so when I heard that, I was like, okay, the wrist isn't getting better. I'm not able to play. Get the surgery. So I got the surgery, and then, I got that in June of 2021. And, fast forward to March of 2022, I did the physical therapy. I did, basically everything that I needed to do to get it better. And I didn't have the mobility to get it to be able to generate speed and to swing without pain, and I was starting to have pain in the ulnar side of my wrist, and I just realized I wasn't going to be able to play unless I did something. So I decided just to scrap 2022 and get another procedure done because I consulted with some doctors, and they found a good way of being able to loosen it up, that would allow me to get more flexion, and ultimately, thankfully, I got that second surgery in June of 2022 and was able to start practicing in by October of that year, and it's been relatively good since. I mean, I've had some times where I've had to take a week or two off here, and I took a little bit of time off in December, about 4 weeks, but being able to play again has been great, and I just take some preventative measures with the wrist now.
Yeah, I mean, the types of decisions you have to make when you're hurt or when you're looking at surgery, and it's your career. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how you're making money. That's how you're getting by. That's what you do all day, every day. Like that's a dramatic decision that has to be made. So, how long was the total time off? Like a year and a half? What
It
was
was
the
about it was April to
from Vegas to
it was
Hawaii?
it
Was
was about it was about 18 months, but the
yeah.
competitive play was about 21 months.
Yeah, and you did one of the craziest things I've heard of. Finally getting healthy. I'm gonna go play a Monday qualifier for a PGA Tour event. Dragged me out of my caddy retirement. And that was the start to a really wild 2023 where there was really like the highs and the lows of someone coming back. I mean, you came back with a vengeance.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, I mean, it was a very unusual year because if you told me at the beginning of the year that I would qualify, and get in the events I got in, I would be, thrilled because, I really wasn't certain whether I would be able to play a full year or like what, how healthy I could be.
Shell Golf Apparel is designed with advanced textile technology that moves with you, with four-way stretch and moisture-wicking properties that keep you cool and dry. Visit shell.shop today and get 40% off the entire golf collection using promo code PlayerPursuits. Now, back to the podcast with your host, Alex Shattuck.
And what did the totals end up being? Two PGA Tour events, the U.S. Open, three if you include that, a couple of Korn Ferry events.
Yeah.
Like for someone coming into the year with virtually no status, like that's crazy.
Yeah, no, it was great. The craziest thing about it was within about 6 weeks of starting to practice again in 2021, I was playing well.
Yeah.
Like it came back quickly, and I do owe I owe that to the swing that I've built with Mike Bender. I really believe that if I didn't have the fundamentals and the understanding of my swing, and then also like just kind of the repetitions and the feedback loops that we'd done for 15 plus years at that point,
Yeah.
I don't know whether I would have been able to come back and play as well as I did quickly. The first round of golf I played, which was within like 3 weeks of hitting balls for the first time in a year and a half. I shot the first round I played was a bogey-free 68. You know, hitting fairways, hitting
It's
greens,
like riding a bike, Austin.
huh?
It's like riding a bike.
Yeah, no, it was like I didn't really tell many people at the time because I didn't want to get ahead of myself. But that between that October and December, I was playing some really good golf. Like I was keeping track of my scores and kind of looking at them to the course ratings because I knew in those Mondays that I was planning to play all the Mondays, and I know you kind of have to be able to shoot a lot of rounds at about 9 better than the course rating, and you need to be averaging about 6 better to be making cuts and everything. And I was doing that. I think I was around 7 to 7.5 on my home courses by December. And then I flew out to Hawaii to play the qualifier with you, and you saw how well I was hitting it in the practice rounds and
The
like
ball striking
on the
wasn't an
range
issue.
and everything. And you're just like, I mean, it was just like it feels as good as it did in 2020, if not better at that point. But the thing you're missing was the competitive rounds, and I hadn't had them in 2 years basically, and I've always been someone that's done much better if I get a lot of consecutive tournaments. I'm not great at taking 2, 3 months off of competitive play and coming back and still like having the competitive ability to just make it happen. Like it's not that I can't do it, it's just historically I tend to play my best after a long stretch of grinding weeks. And I think part of that is you get so used to competing that a competition doesn't even feel like a competition anymore. It's just another day of putting in the work. And unfortunately, even though I had a decent year in many ways, I never really got the competitive reps in because I was doing the Mondays, which are, 1 day shootout. And, the weeks I got in, I didn't make those cuts. And so even those weeks, I was only playing 2 days, right? And so I didn't really play a lot of multiple day tournaments this year. Um, Thankfully was able to get 3 4 round tournaments in towards the end of the year. I played those 2 Korn Ferry events, made those cuts, and then I played a Canadian Tour event, made the cut. So I got a little bit of experience towards the end of the summer, going into Q school, which was nice. And then I played well at first stage. Didn't play. I wouldn't say I played, spectacularly well, but I played pretty well. And yeah, so I'd say to players out there who struggle with competitive nerves or with playing as well as in tournaments as you do in practice, I would say the best advice I have is to compete as much as you can. The more you compete, the more you learn about how to compete. Right? That's obvious. It's so like no matter what you do in life, if you do a lot of it, you'll get better at it. Right? So. Um, that was a lesson from this last year, and something that my dad would always remind me of. He's like, Austin, I mean, you're playing golf, but you're not playing multiple round tournaments. Like you're not ready knowing the way you are, like in the traditional sense. Like you're not really like, even though your game is decent, it almost doesn't matter. Like you would almost rather be playing mediocre and be playing a lot of multiple round tournaments in terms of performing in tournaments than playing great and then like rarely playing.
Well, and
Um,
that's how from a strategic of scheduling standpoint, a player that matches that description is always going to come out ahead if you get a year for it to compound rather than play
yeah,
shootouts every now and again. But I thought it was really interesting. I want to rewind back to, playing back in Hawaii, and even before that, how it kind of came back pretty naturally. And that wraps in. I was just down in Florida hanging out with Mike. And one thing we were talking about is the value in sort of taking that motor pattern and just strengthening it as much as possible. I know I came back from my own wrist procedure, and about 9 months, I have a video that came back. My swing looks identical to before the wrist surgery, because we have those motor patterns, and if we can sort of strengthen them to the point where you don't know anything else, it doesn't go away.
Yeah,
And so it wasn't shocking to me that you came back playing well. It was the competitive thing, taking it from, just like getting better, taking it from practice swing to on the range to the course to the tournament. That's a big one. So I remember in the practice round being like, all right, we're either going to make it through this Monday or we're going to shoot 80. I don't know which one.
Yeah.
But fortunately, it was making it through.
I kind of felt the same way. I was thinking that too. I was like, I put a lot more pressure on myself than I normally would for a Monday, because I hadn't competed in so long, and more so because I knew I was playing well, right? When you're playing well, your expectations go up, and I know it's not easy to get through a Monday qualifier. I mean, the first 3 years of my professional golf career, I was a horrible Monday qualifier. I mean, I probably averaged around 74, 75 in the Mondays. No success in the Mondays.
And what here, let's just put it in perspective. What do you think you averaged in 2023?
Uh, High 68s, probably, something like that.
I'd say it's about right. You
Yeah,
might even be a little higher.
high
Or might even be a
68s.
little lower.
Probably 68.8 or 7 or something like that. Yeah, I mean, I played well on the Mondays. The problem with for me this year is the Mondays I got through were all, higher scored Mondays. I didn't shoot, and this is a testament to not playing, in my opinion. I think when you're playing a lot of golf, those 7, 8, 9 under par rounds are doable. When you're not playing a lot of golf and you're playing well, you can shoot 3, 4, maybe 5 under par, somewhat consistently. But those rounds where you really put it all together, that sometimes comes from like a deep belief and confidence in your ability to close it and keep your foot down and not play tentatively, right? Like when you're playing really well, it's easy to shoot 3 under.
Shell Golf Apparel is designed with advanced textile technology that moves with you, with 4-way stretch and moisture-wicking properties that keep you cool and dry. Visit shell.shop today and get 40% off the entire golf collection using promo code PlayerPursuits. Now, back to the podcast with your host, Alex Shattuck.
Oh, you gotta have some level of cockiness that I
Yeah.
don't have in my body to shoot 10, 11
I mean,
under.
shooting 3 under every week is hard, but if you're playing well, it's not that hard, right? Like, but being able to show up to a qualifier and know that you have to shoot 7, 8, 9 under and doing it, that is very difficult. And so the qualifiers I got through this year, it was 5 under at Sony, 5 under at Valero, and then the U.S. Open sectionals. The course was playing tough. I think I shot maybe 5 under for the 2 rounds or something like that. And yeah, so I never qualified through shooting a really low score. And the weeks, I shot under par in every Monday I played last year. I shot between 1 and 5 under in every qualifier I played last year. So
To the average player, that's unfathomable. But at the pro level,
yeah,
it's
and
needed.
but when you're shooting 2, 3 under on a Monday course, you know that you're not playing well enough to be a top Korn Ferry Tour player,
Oh
because
yeah.
if those courses are going to be as easy, easier than the tour courses, and the tour courses, are going to be set up harder, and you have to probably shoot, 4 under or better for 2 rounds to make the cut. So I was, I think my expectations were realistic because I'd been around it enough. Like I knew what I had to do, and so I was, even though I was playing well, I was still frustrated with the results because, especially because I had a lot of rounds where I hit the ball plenty well. I drove it well enough and hit my irons well enough to qualify. It's just making those 6 to 15 foot birdie putts, or making or just having an unforced error that was totally avoidable. Things like that are more frustrating. I'd say decision making errors are more frustrating than execution errors in golf.
Oh, 100%. If it's to this day, if I hit a bad shot, those happen. But if
Yeah,
you make the bad decision, or when you hit a good shot and ends up in a bad spot, that's your decision making. Those are the frustrating ones.
exactly.
So let's run through quick. I thought some of your thoughts after the U.S. Open were really really good for future success. Came up with a couple shots short of making the cut, and I don't think you had your best stuff, so that's fine. But got to play a practice round with some elite players out there, and it looked to me like you can keep up. So what does that do for you moving forward?
Yeah, it's you can kind of look at it in a frustrating way, like, okay, well, these guys are out there, tearing it up, making millions of dollars, and I don't have a place to play, and I know I can play with them on any given day, right? It's like that's frustrating, but no, it does give you some reassurance and some confidence at the same time because these are the best players in the world. And so, there's no one better than these players, right? We got to play nine with Victor, and you know, watching him do the work he was doing with Mayo was cool. And he's obviously an incredible player, probably the hottest player in the world right now of golf. But you see the way he's hitting the ball, and it's impressive. But it's you're like, okay, like on my solid days I can keep up. And um, yeah, you kind of have to put it in perspective. It's like, over the course of a year, you have to do the little things to make that, half stroke to stroke average better, right? Because, like,
The
over the course
margins are razor thin.
on a small sample size, you can play with anyone in the world. But a Victor Hovland's bad day is just better than everyone else's bad day, right? Like, and over the course of a year, when you fire 50% less over par rounds than your average tour guy, it's not that his 72 is that impressive. It's that he just doesn't do the 73 that often, right? He doesn't shoot the 74, right? It's just those little incremental improvements that really add up. And so, I mean, I've played enough professional golf to know that. And so, when I played with him, and guys like Denny McCarthy and Patrick Reed, it's like I wasn't surprised that I can hit the shots that they can hit. That wasn't really news to me. It was more just, what can you do to week in, week out, you know, be just half a stroke better to a stroke better, and over the course of the year, I mean, that just adds up like crazy.
And everyone listening, that applies to you too, whether it's a 5 handicap, 10 handicap, 20 handicap. It's the same
Yeah.
principle of if you can improve on the margins, clean some things up over the course of the year, you're still going to have what you would consider your bad rounds, but those bad rounds aren't going to punish your scoring average so bad. Your handicap's going to start going down. Everything matches, it's just at a little bit different level. All right, so 2024. It's what's today? Last day of January, 2024. Asian tour. All
Yeah.
right. This is where we've ended up after all this. All right. So you decided to go over play Asian Q school, kind of last minute, just because the
Yeah.
way the schedule all worked, everything like that. Go through and fly through it. I mean, easy enough. So what does your 2024 look like?
Well, the way it works in terms of statuses on tours is, I believe all tours do this. They have categories of status. The Asian Tour has about 29 categories. Uh, and so you obviously want to be a high priority category. The higher the priority category you are, the better a chance you can have to play in a single event, if not all the events. And so I finished 21st at final stage, tied for 21st. But technically, the way they do it is they have to make sure there's a difference between each player to be able to rank you priority wise. So they take the final round. If they're ties, they take the final round, and whoever has a better score of the final round gets that. If you tie the final round, they go to the fourth round.
And very simply put, when a tournament, when they're filling out a field, it's straight down a priority list.
It's straight down a list, right?
And that's sort of where we're going with this conversation. It's nerd talk. You need a PhD to understand everything for every tour, but just try to keep up.
So I finished tied for 21st, but there was one guy that I tied with that I think probably beat me the final round or something. So technically, I'm ranked 22nd in category 16, which is the category out of Q school. And so the first the Asian Tour has a pretty late beginning to the season. The first event is in Malaysia, February, like 15th or so. And as of right now, I'm first alternate into Malaysia. So I think it's very likely I'll get in, so therefore I booked my flights, booked my hotel, and my plan is to
Austin, do Asian Tour events have Mondays?
I think maybe a couple, but no, typically not.
Got it.
So I'm going to fly out the 9th. And anyways, to go back to the status, so I'm 22nd in the 16th category. It doesn't look likely I'll get in some of the events in the beginning of the year. But one of the things I like that the Asian Tour does, I'm not sure whether they've always done this or this is a new policy. I believe it's a new policy, so tours have reshuffles. So what they do is
where they update the priority list based on the money list.
The money list or the points list based on your performance of that season. So what the Asian Tour started doing is, I believe what it is they don't have a reshuffle until the last guy in from Q school in the full priority of Q school, meaning top 35, until the last guy in that 35th position has played at least 4 events. They won't have a reshuffle, meaning I'll probably get likely 5 events before the first reshuffle. So I don't know when the first reshuffle will be, but it's nice to know that I'll get an opportunity to play events before that reshuffle, because some other tours will do a reshuffle, 4 events in, or let's just say 8 events in.
Whether you, as someone with status, has even played or not.
Yeah, exactly. And so if you haven't played in those first 4 events, you could be Monday qualifying the rest of the year to get in. So it looks like, thankfully I'll get some opportunities. I'm not sure exactly what my schedule is yet, which is tough because, when you fly into these countries, you need to get visas. You need to have a flight leaving the country, so they know you're not just going to stay there. And so that makes it difficult.
Tour help with that, or are you do you have to manage that on your own?
The Asian Tour can help you, give you information on how to apply for visas. They keep your passport information on tour in case there are any issues, while traveling or while being in a foreign country. They're pretty good at having your information in case there are any, medical or, God forbid, like criminal issues, right? Like, they do all that stuff. But no, you kind of have to manage your own affairs. And so the plan is to fly into Malaysia the 9th, which I wouldn't be arriving there till Sunday, which I think is the 11th there. And hopefully I get in that event before I leave. I would expect to. We got about 9-10 days, so
yeah.
Hopefully I get in before. One nice thing about Asian Tour. There are a lot of nice things about Asian Tour, but one good thing in terms of exemptions, I've applied for them for the ones that I'm not in. I don't know what my chances are. I might not get in any of them. But they do have more exemption spots. So in a PGA Tour event, you have typically four
Hmm.
sponsors exemption spots. An Asian Tour event, typically 10 to maybe 15, even 20 in some of them. So hoping hoping I can get in Malaysia. And then the next event's in Oman, and that's part of the international series that the Liv has partnered with the Asian Tour on, which is almost like a tour within a tour, where it's higher points, priority, higher money, um, and they do have some sort of relationship in terms of graduating into Liv or to doing the Liv Q series.
Shell Golf Apparel is designed with advanced textile technology that moves with you, with four-way stretch and moisture-wicking properties that keep you cool and dry. Visit shell.shop today and get 40% off the entire golf collection using promo code PlayerPursuits. Now, back to the podcast with your host, Alex Shattuck.
Left, right?
Yeah.
Carl Yuan all of a sudden got into the top 150, full status, all this good stuff. So that's just one example. So with Liv partnering with the Asian Tour, what does that look like, and how does one earn their way on to whether it's Liv or other tours from the Asian Tour? And the European Tour or DP World Tour is involved here too.
Yeah, so the only person that's guaranteed live status is the person that finishes number one in the international series, which is going to be, a collection of probably 7 to 10 events throughout the Asian Tour schedule, and those events sometimes are co-sanctioned with other tours. So you're not just competing with guys on the Asian Tour, you're competing with guys from the DP World Tour, and you're competing with Live Tour players because a lot of those Live Tour players want to take advantage of the world ranking points because they aren't competing for world ranking points on the Live schedule. So they will, even though the purses are, smaller than they're used to, they will go to these countries to compete for not just world ranking points, but some of these events, even Malaysia, even though the Malaysian event is not an international series event, it is part of the RNA's qualifying series for the Open. So there are 3 spots allocated to the top 3 guys in the Malaysian Open who are not already qualified for the Open. So there's some players that from the Live Tour that I believe will be competing in Malaysia. And then, the thing with the Live Tour is everything is kind of flowing, right? Like they're making decisions as they go. And so in 2023, they decided, pretty late in the year that they were going to have their promotions event, which was basically their Q school. And the top 30 on the International Series points list qualified into their Q school. And from there, there are other categories that qualify you to the Live Q school. But of that, if you finish in the top 3, you have full Live status. So in theory, you could kind of say there are 4 Live cards to be given out. Unless maybe you tear up the Asian Tour and finish 4th in Q Series, and some guy on the Live Tour wants to sign you to his team. You never know. That's an unlikely scenario because they're going to tend to sign guys, from college that are really tearing up the college circuit, and I think that's a smart thing for them to do. But yeah, there's some politics involved with getting to Live, but in terms of getting to Live through Asian Tour, that's basically the way to do it. You either win the International Series points, or you finish top 30 in the points and then play well at Q School. But thankfully, I don't know how much the PIF has pumped money into the Asian Tour, but I do know that the Asian Tour purses are pretty solid this year.
Yeah, they're dramatically bigger than I remember.
Yeah, and they haven't released the full schedule yet. I think they still have at least 6 more events to add. And so hopefully the other events are just like that, the ones that they have now, because they have good purses. And yeah, I mean the good thing with Asian Tour too is you get good world ranking points. If you John Catlin a few years ago worked his way into the top 100, I believe, and then got temporary. Um, I believe he got DP World status through that, and then got temporary PGA or Korn Ferry status from that. So that's one way of doing it. I'd say that's probably, if you're playing really good golf, that might be the best bet you have is to get into that temporary, top 100, or I mean, top 50. I mean, that gets you in majors. So there are different ways to go about it. I mean, all of them are a result of playing good golf.
Yeah.
Um,
You can't really game the system, but there is a system to work up.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. There's no secret as to how to go up the system. I mean, you just gotta play good golf. But there are definitely different avenues you can take. To the DP World Tour, to the PGA Tour, to the Korn Ferry Tour, through Asia. But honestly, like the Asian Tour is a really good tour, and the purses are bigger than the Korn Ferry Tour now. So. As long as you're fine with taking 30-hour flights and grinding out in different countries, it's a good way to do it. So,
You once
yeah,
told me you
I'm
loved
excited.
that part of it, Austin. We'll see how much that stays, but for now.
Oh, I mean, flying back from Q school was brutal. It was absolutely brutal.
Yeah, you got to get over there, get a home base kind of established, and just
Yeah,
sort of ride it out and play good golf, earn your way back.
yeah,
But the Asian Tour, it provides some unbelievable opportunity, and they're golf crazy.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
And the courses are good.
yeah.
They know how to run events, and it's very professionally done, and it's well organized, and the people that run it know what they're doing. Unho Park, the director, he played professional golf for decades, and really follows closely the world of golf, and understands what tours are doing to benefit their players, how to run events better. Just at Q School, they had 4 physios, at Asian Tour Q School. I mean, I'm pretty sure the PGA Tour doesn't have physios at Q School. Um,
No.
they had Pro Vs on the range. They had pin sheets sent out to the players at 6 p.m. every night. They have shuttles running back and forth from the hotels to the course from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. I mean, they were on top of it. They ran a great event, and I'm sure it's only going to get better. So I'm definitely gonna take advantage of the physios. That's something I never really did on the Korn Ferry Tour in 2020. But when you're taking when you're traveling for 30 plus hours, you get into a new country, and your body, whether it's not from eating great or from being cramped in a tiny seat for 30 hours, like it's helpful to have those physios for sure.
All right. Well, I think that 2024 is going to be a big one. You obviously have the opportunity that been waiting for, and it's staring right at us all in the face. So,
Yeah.
I think it's going to be good. Is there anything else you want to kind of shout out, get out there? What do you need for the year? Anything like that before we hop off?
Um, No, I wish your podcast and your career the best this year. I think it's going to be a really exciting year. It's kind of it's chaotic in a way because I don't really know exactly what my schedule is right now, and I've kind of gonna be flying all over. But I'm excited. Like I kind of have this like this good just a good feeling about it. And as long as I just keep doing what I'm doing, work hard, and keep a good mindset, keep the body healthy, like I think it's gonna be a good year.
Well, I think I like the way that you're talking through the year, where it's almost like the golf is a given, and when you're that comfortable with the way you're playing, or that confident with how the golf is going to go, and kind of worried about the other things, that's usually a good sign because it's just you're
Yeah,
playing free.
yeah, true.
All right, Austin. So it's great to have you on. I'm sure we'll do something again. If anyone listening wants more information, DM me, Austin, whatever. We'll kind of go from there. But good luck this year,
Thank
and
you.
that's it.
I appreciate
The
it.
game
Thanks,
of
Alex.
golf.
You got it.
It's both challenging and rewarding, requiring focus, concentration, and the ability to tune out outside distractions. Peak performance is achieved through a synergy of body and mind. Shell Golf Apparel is designed with advanced textile technology that moves with you, with 4-way stretch and moisture-wicking properties that keep you cool and dry. Visit shell.shop today and get 40% off the entire golf collection using promo code PLAYERPURSUITS. Now, back to the podcast with your host, Alex Shattuck.